Africa, a continent of immense beauty, diversity, and a history rich in stories of empires and kingdoms. Yet, etched deeply within its heart are the scars of colonialism, a period of exploitation and oppression that left an indelible mark on the continent's soul. Across its vast expanse, the winds of change brought with them the encroaching shadow of European powers hungry for resources and dominion. But Africa was not a land to be subdued without a fight. From the sands of the Sahara to the savannas of the south, countless acts of defiance flickered and roared, challenging the relentless advance of empire. The Nandi Resistance, a struggle waged by a proud and resilient people in what is now Kenya, stands as a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who dared to resist. For over a decade, the Nandi people, skilled warriors and pastoralists, fought bravely against the might of the British Empire, their spears and shields clashing against the thunderous roar of rifles and cannons. This is their story, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring legacy of resistance. High in the fertile highlands of western Kenya, where the air is cool and thin, lived the Nandi people. Pastoralists at heart, their lives were deeply intertwined with their cattle, a symbol of wealth, prosperity, and their connection to the land. Skilled warriors, the Nandi were renowned for their bravery and tactical prowess. Their spears and shields a familiar sight in the rolling hills and valleys they called home. Their society, governed by a council of elders and guided by spiritual leaders known as Orkoiyot, was steeped in tradition and a deep reverence for the natural world. The Orkoiyot, revered as both spiritual leaders and advisors, held a unique position within Nandi society. Their pronouncements carried the weight of prophecy, their words shaping the destiny of their people. As the 19th century drew to a close, whispers of strangers from distant lands, with skin as pale as the moon and hair like spun gold, reached the ears of the Nandi. These whispers, carried on the wind, spoke of powerful beings who wielded weapons of thunder and fire, their arrival heralding a time of great upheaval. Among the prophecies that echoed through the highlands, those of Mongo and Kimniole, two prominent Orkoiyot, stood out, their words casting a long shadow over the Nandi people. While the Nandi tended to their cattle, the world beyond their highlands was rapidly changing. The British Empire set its sights on East Africa, driven by economic ambition and a belief in their own superiority. Their arrival disrupted the delicate balance of power. Treaties were signed under duress, extending British reach. Initial curiosity turned to suspicion and mistrust. This clash of cultures set the stage for a conflict that would alter the destiny of the Nandi people. The Nandi people inhabited a land of breathtaking beauty, a tapestry of rolling hills, fertile valleys, and dense forests. Watered by crystal-clear streams and rivers, their territory was a sanctuary for diverse plant and animal life. The highlands, with their cool air, provided lush pastures for grazing cattle. The Nandi viewed their land as a sacred trust, a gift from the ancestors to be cherished and protected. Their homes, made of wood and thatch, blended seamlessly into the landscape. The sacred cattle were the lifeblood of the Nandi. At the heart of Nandi culture lay a deep reverence for their cattle. Cattle were more than just livestock. They embodied history, traditions, and spiritual beliefs. The rhythms of Nandi life were intertwined with their cattle. Every aspect of Nandi society revolved around their cattle. Cattle provided food, clothing, and tools. Cattle played a central role in ceremonies and rituals. Marriages were sealed with the exchange of cattle. Wealth and standing were measured by the size of their herds. The rhythm of the seasons was a pastoral symphony for the Nandi. Their lives intertwined with the seasons, dictated by rains and pasture. They migrated for fresh grazing lands following ancient routes. The rains brought celebration, renewal, and abundant milk. Skilled pastoralists, they knew their land intimately. The Orkoiyot were the voices of the ancestors, spiritual leaders with prophetic powers. They held paramount importance. Intermediaries between realms, keepers of wisdom, interpreters of dreams, consulted on war, peace, fertility, and omens. Their blessings were sought before battles, lived in seclusion, requiring solitude and contemplation, identifiable by distinctive attire, each element symbolic. As the 19th century drew to a close, a sense of unease settled upon the Nandi. Whispers of strange beings, pale-skinned and wielding weapons of thunder and fire, began to circulate. The Orkoiyot received troubling visions, their dreams filled with omens of change. Among the prophecies, those of Mongo and Kimnyule stood out. Mongo prophesied the arrival of the white man, beings with skin as pale as the moon. Their arrival heralded a time of great upheaval and suffering. Kimnyule echoed Mongo's warnings, predicting a profound impact on the Nandi way of life. The tranquility of the Nandi Highlands was about to be shattered. The arrival of British traders Andrew Dick and Peter West set in motion a protracted conflict. Driven by greed, they ignited a firestorm of resistance. Operating on the fringes of the British Empire, they saw Africa as an opportunity for enrichment. Trading in ivory and guns, their dealings were often secretive. The Nandi viewed them with suspicion, their motives unclear. The stage was set for a confrontation, a clash of wills between a people determined to preserve their way of life and interlopers driven by avarice. Andrew Dick, a man whose very name would become synonymous with brutality and oppression among the Nandi, cut a swathe of fear and resentment wherever he went. His temper was as legendary as his ruthlessness, his outbursts of rage feared by African and European alike. He saw the Nandi as obstacles to be removed, their customs and traditions as mere inconveniences to be swept aside in his pursuit of profit. He established trading posts throughout the region, often through coercion and intimidation, his methods leaving a trail of bitterness and resentment in their wake. Dick's interactions with the Nandi were characterized by a callous disregard for their customs and beliefs. He treated their elders with contempt, ignored their pleas for fairness, and resorted to violence at the slightest provocation. His actions, far from cowing the Nandi into submission, only served to solidify their resolve to resist his encroachments. Stories of Dick's brutality spread like wildfire through the Nandi Hills, each tale adding fuel to the growing flames of resistance. He had become a symbol of everything the Nandi despised, his very presence a stain on their land. Dick, blinded by greed and consumed by his own sense of self-importance, remained oblivious to the storm he was brewing, his actions pushing the Nandi ever closer to the brink of open rebellion. Peter West, in contrast to the volatile and abrasive Dick, presented a more amiable facade. He understood the importance of cultivating relationships, of masking his true intentions behind a veneer of friendship and goodwill. He believed that the Nandi could be manipulated, their cooperation secured through a combination of flattery, empty promises, and carefully calculated acts of generosity. West saw himself as a shrewd negotiator, a man capable of charming the natives into submission. He sought to establish a trade monopoly with the Nandi, believing that he could control the flow of goods and information in and out of their territory, thereby enriching himself and solidifying his position within the burgeoning colonial hierarchy. He underestimated the resolve of the Nandi, their deep-seated pride and independence blinding him to the simmering resentment that lay beneath the surface of their interactions. West's attempts to charm and cajole the Nandi were met with polite skepticism. The Nandi, while willing to trade with outsiders on their own terms, had no intention of becoming subservient to anyone, least of all to those who saw them as nothing more than pawns in a larger game of empire. West's miscalculation, his belief that he could manipulate the Nandi to serve his own ends, would prove to be a fatal error, one that would cost him dearly. The fragile peace between the Nandi and British traders shattered on July 16, 1895. Nandi warriors, fueled by anger, launched a surprise attack on West's camp, leaving most dead. Survivors fled and news of the attack spread, igniting a long and bloody struggle. Peter West's death escalated a minor resistance into a matter of imperial prestige. The British, wounded in pride, mobilized troops for a punitive expedition. Confident in their firepower, they underestimated the Nandi's resolve to defend their land. In late summer 1895, British forces entered Nandi territory, armed with modern rifles. The Nandi waged guerrilla warfare, ambushing patrols and raiding supply lines. British tactics of burning villages only solidified Nandi resolve, failing to achieve their objectives. In 1897, the British launched a second expedition with smaller, mobile units. They tried to win over segments of the Nandi population, but faced strong resistance. The new tactics failed to deliver the decisive blow the British hoped for. The Nandi adapted their tactics, using their knowledge of the terrain. They targeted British supply lines and isolated outposts, proving difficult to defeat. The British struggled against an opponent that couldn't be easily subdued. By the turn of the century, an uneasy truce was declared between the Nandi and British. Both sides saw the truce as a temporary respite, preparing for future conflict. The underlying causes of the conflict remained unresolved, setting the stage for more violence. The fragile peace was short-lived as Nandi Resistance reignited. The British underestimated the depth of Nandi anger and commitment. Every act of resistance fueled the flames, pushing both sides closer to open rebellion. Sir Charles Elliot, the new commissioner, aimed to crush the Nandi resistance. He combined military might with political and economic pressure. Reinforcements and seasoned officers were dispatched, preparing for a relentless campaign. Colonel Meinertzhagen led a brutal campaign to break the Nandi spirit. British forces established fortified camps and launched punitive expeditions. Meinertzhagen's tactics, though effective, were ruthless and indiscriminate. Led by Koitalel Arap Samoei, the Nandi continued guerrilla warfare. Koitalel's leadership maintained Nandi morale and resistance. British frustration led to increasingly brutal tactics, but the Nandi spirit remained unbroken. The British faced a protracted and costly conflict, their victories often Pyrrhic. The Nandi, though weakened, fought with tenacity, leaving a lasting impact. The resistance shattered British illusions of invincibility and inspired future generations. The Nandi resistance, though weakened by years of relentless warfare and facing overwhelming British military superiority, remained a thorn in the side of the colonial administration. Colonel Richard Meinertzhagen, determined to crush the rebellion once and for all, realized that conventional military tactics alone would not suffice. The Nandi, masters of guerrilla warfare, could melt into the dense forests and rugged terrain, evading capture and continuing their resistance. Meinertzhagen, a cunning and ruthless strategist, conceived a plan to lure Koitalel Arap Samoei, the charismatic and revered Orkoiyot of the Nandi, into a trap. He understood that Koitalel's death, a devastating blow to Nandi morale and leadership, would hasten the demise of the rebellion. Meinertzhagen, a master of deception, crafted a plan to exploit the Nandi's desire for peace. He sent emissaries to Koitalel, bearing messages of peace and reconciliation, their words laced with honeyed promises of coexistence and respect for Nandi traditions. Koitalel, weary of the endless bloodshed and the suffering of his people, was receptive to the idea of a negotiated settlement. He had seen firsthand the devastation wrought by years of conflict, the loss of life, the displacement, the erosion of Nandi traditions. After weeks of tense negotiations, a meeting was arranged between Koitalel and Colonel Meinertzhagen, the venue a seemingly neutral ground near what is now Nandi Bears Club. Koitalel, trusting in the sanctity of the negotiations and believing that Meinertzagen was a man of honor, agreed to meet without the protection of his warriors. He carried with him the hopes of his people, their dreams of a peaceful future, their longing for an end to the bloodshed. He arrived at the meeting place with a small entourage of advisors and elders, their faces etched with a mixture of hope and apprehension. They carried with them a white flag, a symbol of their peaceful intentions, their desire for a just and lasting peace. Meinertzagen, his true intentions masked by a veil of diplomacy, greeted Koitalel with feigned warmth and respect. He spoke of peace and reconciliation, his words carefully chosen to disarm his enemy, to lull him into a false sense of security. The two leaders sat facing each other, their postures reflecting the gravity of the occasion, the weight of history upon their shoulders. A tense silence hung in the air, broken only by the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. Unbeknownst to Koitalel, Meinertzagen had no intention of negotiating in good faith. As Koitalel and Meinertzagen exchanged pleasantries, their words a carefully choreographed dance of diplomacy. A group of British soldiers, their rifles loaded, their bayonets fixed, silently surrounded the clearing. Meinertzagen, his eyes cold and calculating, gave a subtle signal, a barely perceptible nod, and the trap was sprung. The soldiers, their movements swift and silent, emerged from their hiding places, their rifles trained on the unsuspecting Nandi delegation. Koitalel, his sharp senses finally alerting him to the danger, rose to his feet, his hand instinctively reaching for the ceremonial sword that hung at his side. He knew in that heart-stopping moment that he had been betrayed, that the promises of peace had been a cruel charade. Before Koitalel could draw his sword, a volley of gunfire erupted, the air thick with the smell of gunpowder and the deafening roar of rifles. Koitalel, his body riddled with bullets, crumpled to the ground, his lifeblood staining the parched earth. His advisors and elders, caught completely off guard, were cut down in a hail of bullets, their bodies falling silently around their fallen leader. The white flag, a symbol of peace and hope, lay trampled in the dirt, stained with the blood of innocence. The assassination of Koitalel Arap Samoei, a man revered by his people as a spiritual leader, a skilled warrior, and a symbol of Nandi Resistance, sent shockwaves through the Nandi highlands. The news of his betrayal and murder spread like wildfire, carried by the wind to every corner of Nandi territory, igniting a firestorm of grief, anger, and despair. Meinertzagen, his mission accomplished, ordered his men to decapitate Koitalel's body, a gruesome act intended to terrorize the Nandi into submission. Koitalel's head, a grisly trophy of war, was preserved in a jar of formaldehyde and sent back to England, a macabre symbol of British imperial might, a chilling reminder of the price of resistance. It was displayed in a museum, a curiosity for the British public, a testament to the supposed savagery of the natives they had subjugated. The Nandi, their hearts heavy with grief, their spirits broken by the loss of their leader, could only watch in horror and disbelief as their worst fears were realized. The British, their thirst for revenge satiated, their authority seemingly restored, declared victory. But it was a hollow victory, one achieved through treachery and brutality, a victory that would forever be stained by the blood of Koitalel Arap Samoei. The Nandi Resistance, though crushed with Koitalel Arap Samoei's assassination, left an indelible mark on Kenya's history. Koitalel's name symbolizes resistance against oppression, inspiring generations of Kenyans. The Nandi, their land stolen, their culture suppressed, never forgot their ancestors' sacrifices. Koitalel's story, a tale of courage and sacrifice, reminds us of colonialism's human cost. It stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The long shadow of empire cast scars on the land. The Nandi Resistance, though crushed by the British, left an indelible mark on Kenya. The Nandi people, their land scarred, faced rebuilding under colonial rule. The British imposed their will, exploiting the fertile highlands. They displaced communities, introducing cash crops, transforming Nandi life. The Nandi resisted, clinging to their traditions and identity. The legacy of resistance lived on, a reminder of the price of freedom. The seeds of nationalism from resistance to rebellion were sown. The Nandi Resistance, though brutally suppressed, planted the seeds of Kenyan nationalism, its echoes inspiring future generations to rise against colonial rule. The story of Koitalel Arap Samoei, the Orkoiyot who dared to challenge the might of the British Empire, became a rallying cry for those who yearned for freedom, his name whispered in hushed tones, his image a symbol of defiance. The Nandi people, their experiences under colonial rule mirroring those of other ethnic groups across Kenya, played a pivotal role in the struggle for independence. They joined forces with other Kenyans, their shared experiences of oppression forging a bond of unity that transcended ethnic and regional divisions. The Mau Mau uprising of the 1950s, a violent and bloody struggle against British rule, drew inspiration from the Nandi Resistance, its ranks filled with veterans of earlier conflicts, their tactics echoing those of their forefathers. The British, their grip on power weakening, their empire crumbling under the weight of its own contradictions, found themselves facing a new generation of Kenyans emboldened by the sacrifices of their ancestors, determined to reclaim their birthright. Reclaiming the narrative, Koitalel Arap Samoei's resurgence came to the forefront. In the aftermath of Kenyan independence, the story of Koitalel Arap Samoei, once suppressed and marginalized, experienced a resurgence, his legacy reclaimed as a symbol of national pride and resistance against injustice. The new Kenyan government, eager to forge a national identity distinct from its colonial past, recognized the importance of honoring its heroes, those who had dared to challenge the might of the British Empire. Monuments were erected, schools and streets named in his honor, his story incorporated into school curricula, his image gracing postage stamps and banknotes. Koitalel Arap Samoei, once a symbol of Nandi resistance, became a national hero, his story resonating with Kenyans from all walks of life. His courage, his determination, his unwavering commitment to his people's freedom transcended ethnic and regional boundaries, his legacy a unifying force in a nation still grappling with the complexities of its colonial past. The resurgence of Koitalel's story is a testament to the power of memory, the enduring legacy of resistance, the human need to honor those who have fought for freedom and justice. A timeless struggle, echoes of resistance in a modern world, remind us of enduring lessons. The Nandi Resistance, though a historical event confined to a specific time and place, holds timeless lessons for a world still grappling with the legacies of colonialism, oppression, and the struggle for freedom. The story of the Nandi people's courageous stand against a global superpower, their determination to preserve their way of life, their willingness to sacrifice everything for their freedom, serves as a potent reminder that the human spirit, though tested by adversity, can never be truly extinguished. Their story reminds us that resistance can take many forms, from armed struggle to peaceful protest, from acts of defiance to the preservation of culture and identity. It teaches us that the struggle for freedom is a continuous process, a relay race passed down from generation to generation, each generation building upon the sacrifices of those who came before. The Nandi Resistance, though a distant echo in the annals of history, continues to inspire those who fight for a more just and equitable world, a world where the rights of all people are respected, where the echoes of resistance continue to reverberate, reminding us that the human spirit, though tested, can never be truly vanquished.